This episode is brought to you by the Regional Air Quality Council. This summer, don't go it alone. Carpool and combine trips, or take public transit to get where you need to go to reduce ground-level ozone. Created from pollutants like car exhaust, ozone is the Front Range's biggest air quality issue and a leading cause of respiratory problems. Learn more ways to help improve air quality in the Front Range at simplestepsbetterair.org. And sign up for summer ozone alerts to know when it matters most by sending Better Air CO to 21000. This episode is brought to you by the Denver Art Museum. Check out the Denver Art Museum's next late-night event, Untitled Artist Takeover, happening on Friday, July 25th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Join featured artists and disability rights activists Wheelchair Sports Camp for an evening of fun, including art making, offbeat art tours in the galleries, one-night-only art installations, and performances by Wheelchair Sports Camp, Denver's biggest, smallest band. Untitled Artist Takeover is included in general admission and free for Denver Art Museum members. Reserve your tickets today at denverartmuseum.org.
Today on CityCast Denver, Mayor Mike Johnston gave his annual State of the City speech Monday night. He celebrated a laundry list of accomplishments from his first 2 years in office and laid out plans for the second half of his term. But a growing number of Denverites seem to be falling out of love with Mayor Mike. So we invited one of his biggest critics, former mayoral candidate Lisa Calderon, on to talk through the speech and offer a different point of view. Today is Wednesday, July 23rd. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about. All right, here we are. We're on. Welcome back to the show, Lisa Calderon.
It's always great to be here, Paul.
It's great to talk to you about this stuff. You're one of my favorite people to talk about Denver with. So
really?
It's always, oh my God, of course. Of course.
Thank you.
So I think we should start, because we're going to talk about the mayor. We're going to talk about his big speech Monday night, which is the halfway point of his first term, maybe first term, maybe only term, I guess. That's open question. Just to start, how would you characterize your relationship with the mayor? Just so people know what they're getting into.
I'm not a fan. How about that? But I endorsed him.
You did?
Right? I endorsed him. I actually had higher hopes, and I think that he said all of the right things to essentially get me on board. We had an interview process. He signed off on all kinds of commitments, and then he failed to keep them. So I'm not a fan as a result of his actions.
Well, his actions are what we're going to talk about. His actions and his words. The big speech Monday night, the State of the City. We both watched it. Were you going to watch it before I asked? Or were you? You were, of course you were. I know you were.
I mean, I had a busy schedule. I did get an invitation to it.
Oh, that's nice.
But I would have watched it regardless, whether I watched it live or not. Mm-hmm. But I would have at some point watched it. So thanks for the impetus to watch it sooner than later.
Happy to. Glad to hear your thoughts. What did you think? Big picture. What's your headline?
Headline is good at giving speeches and short on substance.
It was a very speechy type speech, which I know doesn't mean anything, but it was like, dang, this is like how John F. Kennedy would give a speech, or like, it felt like a very old school, like he's touching on big themes, big lofty themes. It's like maybe a little bit bigger than Denver to me. He's got aspirations, this mayor of ours.
See, this is why I think you're a fan of his, because I saw no John F. Kennedy.
No?
No. What I will give him credit for is I think he tried to place himself within the context of history. I'm a big history buff, and I appreciate that context and the nod to all of those history makers that came before him, including, people of color like Barney Ford, big back in the day, one of the first Black, millionaires before that was possible, right? But he's no Barney Ford. And so I think what he's trying to do is carve out his legacy, which he should as a mayor, right? He has made history. But I also think that as yet another white wealthy male who has, had rich friends help him to, acquire that seat, he's trying to distinguish himself from all the others. And I didn't feel like he did that So Denverites like me were unmoved by his speech.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that point, actually. The lack of distinguishing himself, because the history point especially, and I wanted to talk about this because he opened his speech with an extended allusion to Denver's founding story. Well, a lot of people would think of it as Denver's founding story, this story about how when they were building the Transcontinental Railroad, Denver was just this dusty town at the confluence of two rivers, and then the railroad people were like, you know what, we're not going to go through Denver, we're going to go through Cheyenne, and then Denver's leaders got together and built the spur that brought the railroad and all the business down to Denver and allowed the city to grow. And I feel like I've heard that story 100 times from these elected officials. Like, I know Mayor Hancock told it a bunch of times. I know Mayor Hickenlooper told that story. I don't need to hear that story anymore.
There you go.
I'm good on that one.
Right. And, you know, all of the Chinese people who were killed building the railroads and the indigenous people who were killed due to Western expansion, right? He kind of gave a little bit of a nod to that, but it's right. It just it didn't feel fresh.
One thing that was fresh, and I want to play a clip for you and hear what you think about this. This was like the one moment it was like, this is such a signature Mike Johnston moment from this speech. So he's just talking about big themes, and it's kind of a long clip, but let's take a listen.
But what matters most when taking on impossible problems is to understand the power of momentum and the experience of progress. If you are dropped in the ocean and you're trying to swim to land, it can feel overwhelming. When you swim furiously for an hour and you look up and see you've gone no place, you lose hope. The greatest loss is not in the wasted energy. It's in the nagging fear that no matter what you do, it won't make a difference. That feeling is called learned helplessness. It's the despair that settles in when you feel like no matter what you try, it won't work. So you just stop trying. That is why reflecting on our progress is so important. The purpose of marking our progress is not to pat ourselves on the back for what we've done. It's to build our energy and our will for the work that still lies ahead. Denver is creating a new dynamic. Call it learned hopefulness.
Learned hopefulness. That's what I wanted to hear your thoughts about.
Stop it.
What do you think? Tell me.
That is absolutely a classic Mike Johnston tactic, and that is to take a concept from another context and co-opt it for his own means. I have worked with domestic violence survivors for over 25 years. And this concept of learned helplessness comes from being in an abusive relationship and looking at the factors as to why something doesn't change. And so after a while, you think you can't change things. So he's got that part of it right. We also have the concept of learned hopefulness, which is that you keep getting told by the person harming you that things will get better. And it is classic gaslighting. So I don't know who advised him to use that term, but it is out of context. But for someone like me who's in touch with people who are feeling harmed by the city every day, it was actually quite appropriate that he would use a term of people who feel like he is harming them and they are being gaslit by him.
You feel like the learned helpless, so like the negativity that people are feeling or like being harmed. What are you talking about, being harmed by him?
Have you looked at the price of shopping, housing, food, everything?
Yeah.
And people are hurting. And instead, we kind of get this sweeping historical and look into the future speech. And yet you're not talking to city workers who are terrified of losing their jobs. You know, I was with them out there protesting and in the career service meetings as they were being stripped away of their seniority rights. And let's get this straight, because I've heard this framing too on this show and other shows. This is not about meritocracy. That's another classic Johnston framing of issues. This is about getting rid of the workers who have helped to build the city, and the ones who have been there the longest are the most expensive because they've been getting raises that they've deserved. So he didn't speak to those people. He brought people who everyone would be like, oh yeah, those are good people, the police officer, etc. What about the ones who clean our hallways, the janitors, etc.? So he didn't speak to a whole lot of people who are suffering in this city, who are afraid of where they're going to live, or even city workers who are going to lose their jobs and may end up homeless as well.
I do agree that the absence of a discussion of that issue of imminent layoffs that we know is coming. The city is planning these layoffs. He says that it is in response to this huge deficit or a shortfall of tax revenues that he's announced earlier this year, $250 million over the next 2 years. We know these layoffs are coming. And you're talking about the debate that he proposed shifting the way the city would decide who would be laid off.
This episode of CityCast is sponsored by Babbel. Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, maybe even a whole new life. So why not start that journey today? You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based technique that quickly teaches you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. Just one of the 12 languages you can learn with it, including Dutch, French, Italian, which is going to be next for me, Turkish, and Russian. I love the interactive dialogues that Babbel has, which allow me to practice what I've learned right away, and also the speech recognition function, which makes sure I'm getting the pronunciation just right, which honestly, usually I'm not. Also, I love that Babbel's lessons always cover actual things that I talk about in the real world, like food, talking to people I've just met, and also food. Staying motivated to learn a new language has never been easier thanks to real-time feedback, progress trackers, and handy visualizations. And only 10 to 15 minutes a day on Babbel's mobile app or website. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pâté. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
Just to get back to this learned hopelessness thing, I think there's part of that did resonate with me. I don't know about the whole the abstract concept that's so Mike Johnston to put that on top of this feeling, but the feelings resonate. I do think there's this, Denverites are kind of down on themselves right now. It doesn't feel like things are good. And he's calling for optimism, even if it's irrational, even if it's reckless, because the optimism itself is something you change your attitude. Things will get better if you try. That was what I got from his speech. And I thought that resonated. I thought that would work. That worked. I think people want that.
There's a fine line between optimism and gaslighting. And the reason why I think it resonated with you and probably resonated with others is natural, because the brain doesn't like cognitive dissonance. It wants to be hopeful. It doesn't want to feel uncomfortable. And so when someone is seemingly throwing you a lifeline saying things are going to get better, again, that's what keeps us in a state of trauma, right? Because you keep hoping for things to get better while things are steadily getting worse.
There is something about the attitude, though. If you change your attitude, and you can choose this. I had this experience. This was so crazy that this happened, but I was going on the Cherry Creek Trail. I was going for a walk with my wife in the morning, and we saw a new mural going up, and I was just the way it struck me was ugh, this sucks. This mural's horrible. I just hated it. And I was like, this is edutainment crap. I thought it was so bad. And then literally that same day, I was biking by myself past the same mural, and something about my headspace changed. And I liked it so much, I stopped and got off my bike and I talked to the artist about what his inspiration was. And I called my wife and I was like, I saw this great mural. And she reminded me that this happened. And it was just my attitude that changed. It was the same mural. It was just my attitude. I think that's what he's talking about, is like, he's like calling on us to think differently about our city.
Yeah, it's called, cognitive behavioral change. So that absolutely is true. You change your thoughts, you change your emotions, you change your actions, right? That's proven in social science. But just telling people to be more optimistic when they don't know if they're going to have a home to live in is a very privileged statement. And I think because he's a very privileged guy, right? He is a millionaire, grew up in Vail. And so he has to make a lot of these reference points to kind of separate himself to say, I understand your pain and suffering. Well, you don't. If you've never faced homelessness like I have, if you've never struggled to, thinking about how do I feed my child like I have, if you haven't faced predatory lenders like I have, like no amount of rhetorical devices can make that authentic. So what I would like to see is we move away from flourishy words to actually results. And he has very mixed results, and that's being generous.
Well, let's talk about him, because he was clearly quite proud of his work on homelessness. He knew this was one of the reasons why Denverites elected him. This was his signature issue as a candidate. I mean, you debated it with him many times back when you were both running for this position. He talked about he has this talking point now ever since the Point in Time survey came out from earlier this year about homelessness and the data. He says that Denver, under his leadership, has experienced the largest multi-year reduction in unsheltered homelessness in American history. And he said it again on Monday night. That sounds pretty good.
In the last 2 years, street homelessness in Denver has dropped by 45%. That is the largest multi-year decrease in unsheltered homelessness of any city in American history. We've closed every large encampment in the city. We've reopened sidewalks to pedestrians and businesses. We have moved 7,000 people off the streets and moved 5,000 people into permanent housing. And in the process, we became the largest American city ever to end the cycle of street homelessness for veterans, meaning no one who has served this country has to sleep outside on the streets of our city.
Of course it sounds good. That's why he says it. And it's overstated, and it's not supported by any independent facts. So, and I independently fact check this also through AI. So what I will give him credit for is the reduction of veteran homelessness, right? Our veterans deserve to have housing, especially healthcare, et cetera. And this is a very hostile federal environment as well toward veterans. And getting to functional zero for veterans, when I think they had like less than 200 people on that list, that was maybe even be a generous number. You should have zero homelessness, functional zero homelessness for veterans. And what functional zero means is that you don't have any new cases rising above a certain threshold. So yes, he did achieve that with a small population who needed assistance, but it was not the majority of homeless folks. Denver is so far behind other cities when it comes to addressing homelessness. So for him to say that he is, made history above Salt Lake City, above Houston, above other places that have shown much more remarkable and sustained housing initiatives and permanent housing initiatives. That is another classic Mike Johnston of take my word for it, don't fact check. And if I repeat it often enough, people will actually believe it.
It is one of those things that, like, you hear a talking point like that over and over. I haven't fact checked it personally. I'm curious about this AI you used. What do you mean when you fact check this with AI?
No, you just ask the question, right? And so
you
for
trust
one,
these things though?
No, then you verify. No, trust but verify, right? So then you go and look in the
Ronald
studies.
Reagan, famous technique.
Yes,
Love it.
Take knowledge where you can get it. But I check what I know to be true in my experience, in the work that I do and the people that I'm talking to. And then I go and look at, various studies, And then I run it and ask the general question, fact check Mike Johnston's State of the City speech. And it verified what I knew to be true from my experience. And that is his claims about this 45% reduction or whatever it is overstated and unverified.
I mean, I saw the point in time survey. The unsheltered homelessness in Denver proper is down. I think the thing that would count against him that I saw in this data is that homelessness overall is up.
Correct.
And that's not unsheltered homelessness. And he has this big goal. When he came into office, he said, I am going to end unsheltered homelessness in my first term. So that's like people that are like literally sleeping on the street at night, not people who are like sleeping on couches, sleeping in their friends' bedrooms. So it seems like the unsheltered homelessness is down, but overall it's up.
Right. And he doesn't make those distinctions. Homelessness has risen under his watch. And so when you're distinguishing between unsheltered homelessness, on the one hand, I understand why everyone is concerned about that. Even unsheltered people are concerned about that. I've moved off of Colfax, so see it, experience it, and have compassion for it, and want solutions for it. Okay.
Because you were in Curtis Park. Sorry, that's interesting too.
Yeah, no, I was in Cole. I was in the Cole neighborhood. And so now I'm half a block from Colfax, and I love it.
Nice.
And people's disdain for seeing poor people, struggling people, people with mental illness visibly can be disturbing. And having them have places to go is needed. But pushing them or disappearing them in a bunch of hotel rooms and hotels that he bought, anybody with the major access to the city's checkbook could have done that. There's nothing revolutionary about that. Homeless rights advocates like Hand have been asking for that, right? That we have permanent places of people to go. But when you still disappear people behind hotel rooms, they are still homeless. Mm-hmm. And homeless means you don't have a permanent place to live. Mm-hmm. That he has not made strides on. And in fact, the facilities that he has them in have had some very dire consequences for some of those people, including rape, murders, and most recently, a child falling out of a balcony.
Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit. That was a really unfortunate, a tragic incident. And there have been definitely reported problems, quite a few problems. But I think politically, for him, for this issue, the fact that he has been able to do these sweeps, he doesn't call them sweeps, neither did his predecessor Hancock, but he has attached the offer of housing into these transitional housing situations for people. I think Denverites probably feel good about that because they get the benefit of coming and enjoying these spaces and not feeling uncomfortable, and the knowledge or the abstract hope knowledge that folks are on the path to something better. And so like as a politician, I think he's on the right track.
Well, as a politician, he should be doing that. Like that's a low bar. Mm-hmm. And it's what people wanted him to do. It's what I wanted him to do, is getting people into safe spaces and into permanent housing. There is a juxtaposition between his public rhetoric and his private actions in terms of his strategies and then how they manifest. So, for example, when he talked about in his speech about kind of balancing, the safety in our streets with compassion, the AIDS Center, which I have never been a fan of the way that it was implemented by Director Armando Saldate, who is now leaving.
The Director of Public Safety.
Public Safety, going to the Colorado CBI, Bureau of Investigations. Created the AIDS Center to be a corral for unhoused people after sweeps. But what that has turned into is a day center for people who want help. That is being shut down. And it was turned into a day center by community providers who said, this is just something that we need. So that's going away. Funding for innovative programs that will help people not go in and out of incarceration is being reduced. Mental health support is being reduced through this administration. So you can give, again, this very visionary, optimistic speech, but as the resources are being pulled back and as the people who deliver those services in the city or administer those programs are being terminated, and let's call them what they are mass terminations. They are not layoffs. Layoffs mean you can potentially come back. You're contradicting yourself in your speech.
Let's move on to public safety, because this is the other big issue I think that is on his plate right now. And you're a criminal justice expert. That's your background. He celebrated big gains here. He touted a 46% drop in homicides. He said he's hired hundreds of police officers, huge drops in auto thefts, catalytic converter thefts. And surprising to me, I didn't know this, but at the same time he was doing all that, there has been an increase in resident satisfaction with the police. So how do you see his impact on this issue?
The catalytic converter issue is true, right? That has dropped. So I know that there were resources in that. The overall crime drop, and this is maybe he should take one of my criminal justice classes. It is cyclical for crime trends to rise and fall. And Denver was not the only place where it has fallen. It has fallen across the nation. So there are researchers who are trying to figure it out. And one of the most prominent theories about that is that after the crime spike as a result of COVID, then resources were pumped into services. Those massive infusion of services had an impact and helped significantly to reduce crime. Now, under Mike Johnston, those services that were put in place are now going to be greatly reduced. So we should be expecting to see a crime increase over time after these services and these city positions are cut that administer those programs.
Huh. Interesting. Well, that's something to watch. That's curious. It does speak to the broader challenge that he's got. I mean, coming out of the pandemic, there was all that extra money from the federal government. So there's going to be funding cuts across a variety of programs. And so, I mean, he kept returning to that same theme. We have to do more with less. Like, I think that's him addressing the layoff situation and the funding challenges.
Well, and having worked for the city, and you know that your funding is going to end. And so it's part of your job to figure out how to build that into a budget, how to kind of either build up your, for example, going after additional grants, right? Or planning for when that money is going to go away. Maybe having a handoff to a nonprofit so they could take the lead, the city being an incubator for innovation, and then handing that off to a more appropriate partner. They knew this money was going to run out. And this is one of the things that I fault him for, is that we knew we were still in a lingering COVID recession. Why not plan for that by tightening the belt instead of acting like you have a blank check to write? And that's what he did. And now city workers are paying for that with their jobs.
Well, I think they expected the bounce back to be better. I think they expected business to come back faster, with downtown especially. And that's why the focus is so much on downtown lately, is because he thought it was going to come back faster. And we haven't seen those revenues come back.
And that's a privileged position to be in. So again, if you've ever struggled economically, you don't expect anything to happen quickly. And so just kind of hoping through your learned hopefulness is not going to get you where you need to go. It's slow and steady in terms of being cautious with how we use our budget while also investing in, what's going to get us the most bang for our buck.
We got to move on to some of his plans for the future, because he did say it was pretty light on specifics, I thought. But he did have a couple I wanted to talk about. One, I don't know if you're going to have thoughts on this, but if you want to weigh in, he said he wants to build a carbon-free downtown and a carbon-neutral airport, which I thought was interesting because the head of the airport just a couple of weeks ago said he's commissioning a study to possibly build a nuclear reactor at the airport. Did you see this news? This kind of blew my mind that this was something that our city is working on. And
again, classic Mike Johnston, that let me just come up with these big ideas and be short on the details of how they'll get implemented or paid for. Mm-hmm. How about instead, when we talk about the airport, we actually look at how few Latinos are getting contracts out there. We did a recent analysis by the Committee for City and Airport Fairness, which is a group of minority business owners, and it's been around for almost 20 years. And they look at the discriminatory practices of awarding contracts. And it tends to be the same people who tend to have connections to the city. Mm-hmm. How about Mayor Johnston actually direct the CEO of the airport, Phil Washington, to actually be more transparent on how these contracts are being assessed and given out? Like, that's low-hanging fruit. I don't know if that's low-hanging. I don't know if anyone knows about that. The other airports... This is blowing my mind. Well, we got to talk more about that sometime. But other airports have much more transparent processes than Denver does. And they've been doing a far better job at equity than Denver has. So I would say before you do this big, catalytic converter? Catalytic converter theft is down, according to Mayor Johnston, if that's what you're referring to. No, we want that to go down. The nuclear reactor? The nuclear reactor. Yeah. Before building a nuclear reactor, do something that will actually make a difference in struggling business owners' lives today. And, then you can give a positive speech about that. Okay, another big promise. This was the specific that jumped out to me on the topic of downtown, bringing downtown back. He says he wants to convert 4 million of the 7 million square feet of empty office space into, quote, housing that's accessible for middle-class Denverites. In part through the new Downtown Development Authority, the expansion of that tax district. That seems like a pretty lofty goal. What do you think? Do you think we're going to see that happen? Well, that was also one of my goals when I was running for mayor. Mm-hmm. And why just middle class? Why not for everybody? And the concept of social housing is that you have mixed income tiers of people living in the same building. So the higher paying tier of people basically subsidize the low income people. And then, of course, you have the middle income folks. I just think it's such a, cliche for politicians to just speak to the middle class. We should all be rising in terms of the working class people, the people who are on fixed incomes, the unhoused folks, and the middle class. They all need relief. So let's talk about them in one breath. But yeah, how about doubling down and going full speed on that, considering the vacancy rate in downtown Denver, which is pretty high? Yeah. It is an interesting issue. We've looked at it a little bit on the show. I think the problem you keep hearing from these developers is that it's extremely expensive to retrofit these office buildings we're in run right now. Can you imagine how much it would cost to rough in plumbing to make this conference room into a bathroom or a shower for an apartment? That would be extremely expensive. So then you talk about adding in social subsidies to make it for lower income or make it affordable housing. It's just that much more expensive. I was surprised that he qualified that at all to accessible for middle-class Denverites. If you just want to talk about, setting a goal, I would set it more broad, just say housing, period. Give yourself a little bit more of an out to actually make a dent on that. That was a surprising proposal. I seriously doubt that's going to happen. 4 million square feet of empty office space converted into housing. Have we seen one? Have you heard of one building? We've been talking about this for years. Well, remember, he's going to solve homelessness too. Yes, that's first. Right. So, solving homelessness means building more housing. And he hasn't figured out a way to do it. He's got 2 years left. And really, a year from now, people will start running for office. Mm-hmm. So then he's going to be back in campaign mode. I have a prediction. I see him as a one-term mayor. You think? Mm-hmm. I think he's either going to be defeated. You can't lay off, thousands of city employees and take our budget into a nosedive and, not solve homelessness that was you promised to do and expect to get a second term. So that's one thing. Or should Senator Michael Bennet become the next governor? Bets are on that, he'll appoint Johnston to his seat, which he would have the power to do. Mm-hmm. So, I think Mike Johnston is actually running or operating the city like a one-term mayor. I mean, some of the mistakes he's making are fatal mistakes. And people won't forget because they will be out of homes, out of jobs, and out of patients.
I really do wonder about that. I mean, that's the big question is because he's setting himself up for another run. He's got another big test ahead of him in November with this bond. Like his sales tax proposal for affordable housing, voters said no last year. He's got another one. He wants voters to approve this bond, almost $1 billion of spending on infrastructure. We'll see. We'll see if people like that. But if he goes 0 for 2 on those two, that's not a good look going into a re-election campaign. I think I actually disagree with you. I think the vibes on Mr. Mike Johnston are good right now, and I would be betting on him on a re-election. Because I think on immigration especially, which is one of the issues Denverites are caring about most right now, the vibes are good. People like what he's saying. People like his message on immigration. I hear it resonating with people all the time. My mother-in-law, who I watched this speech with, I requested that she sit and give me her impressions. She said he was making these corny jokes. He was alluding to Trump, but not addressing him specifically. And my mother-in-law kept being like, I like this guy. He's corny, and I like that. Our politics is so vulgar, and he's here just like being a good man. And he's corny, and he's nice. And that was as simple as that. I think that's what it's going to be for him when he wants to run again.
So I would say, which people are you talking about? Because the people that I talked to want him out, like yesterday. And if we go back to talking about facts, I'm aware of at least 2 polls that have him in the 30 percentile. So it's one thing to cheer for him as he's taking on Trump. Like, I cheer for him when he's taking on Trump because, that's what a mayor should do, right? It's another thing to vote for him because he's doing his job in Denver, a so-called progressive city, for taking on Trump. It's another thing to think about. Do I really want this guy to run my life in the next 4 years who's not listening to constituents right now, who has gone back on promises that are very basic in some cases, that his leadership is the newest leadership people that he's brought on are leaving the city at a rapid pace. Some of the senior people that he kept from the Hancock administration are now leaving, like Saldate. That's, what I'm hearing from people is that this is incompetence. He doesn't know how to run a city. So why would we have him for another 4 years?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think voters will, that'll be an interesting race. Are you going to run again?
No comment.
Really? Come on.
I am asked almost every day when I go and see, meetings or coffee shops or et cetera. And that's why I'm saying people want something different. They want something authentic. And especially after Zoran's race in New York City, that anything is possible in politics. And that's what I tell people. So, I think that we deserve a better mayor than what we have now. And, I'm seriously considering it.
All right, there you go. Well, we are going to sit down with Mayor Mike Johnston on the podcast very soon. And we want to hear what questions you have. Listeners, let us know. If you've got a question you want us to ask the mayor, 720-500-5418. That's the number to call. Leave us a voicemail, send us a text. The number again is 720-500-5418. Lisa Calderon, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
And we will, yes, continue to dream big and deliver big things. And do that in a way that preserves and protects the identity of those neighborhoods and the people that built them. We will do that through community-led growth, like the creation of the city's largest park in more than a century, like welcoming a women's soccer franchise, a new purpose-built stadium on land that has long been vacant, like investing in the Stock Show Triangle in partnership with Gloveville and Elyria and Swansea residents. And yes, we will get a long-term deal done to keep the Denver Broncos in Denver.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell your mother-in-law about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter, and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Denver neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you then. Neighbor. Not neighbor. That's nothing.